Ancient Wonders from the Bible. Unveiling Millennia-Old Mysteries. Have you ever marveled at architectural wonders that defy human imagination? Monuments built from unimaginable wealth, standing tall for thousands of years, yet shrouding secrets that astound the entire world. The Bible, a timeless book, records architectural feats where every stone, every wall tells a story of faith, power, and earth-shattering truths few dare to confront. In this video, we'll embark on a soul-stirring journey, exploring 5 of the most enigmatic biblical structures where terrifying secrets await revelation. The final structure on our list won't just challenge what you believe, it might leave you speechless, stunned by the frightening truth it conceals. Are you ready to face mysteries that intertwine faith, history, and archaeology? Things that could forever change how you view the past and the future. Noah's Ark, a masterpiece of faith amidst life and death. Can you imagine building a colossal vessel without modern technology, cranes, or power saws, just with wood, calloused hands, and unwavering faith? That's precisely what Noah did. And centuries later, his story continues to awe scientists, archaeologists, and believers alike. The Bible recounts that in an age rampant with corruption and chaos on earth, God chose one man for a seemingly impossible mission: to construct a massive sanctuary to save his family and representatives of every animal species from a terrifying great flood. Noah received this divine command from God and began the arduous task: felling trees, carving joints, and designing compartments. The work stretched for years under the scorching sun, facing ridicule and doubt from those around him, burdened by the immense responsibility of safeguarding God's creation. Noah's Ark was no ordinary boat. Its dimensions were colossal, estimated to be around 137 meters long, 23 meters wide, and 14 meters high, roughly the size of a modern cargo ship. It was all constructed from gopher wood and sealed with pitch to make it watertight. The astounding question remains: how could Noah accomplish such a feat without advanced tools? How did he organize all those animal species into the ark in an orderly fashion? And more importantly, was there truly a flood powerful enough to submerge even mountains? Is it legend or fact? Scientists relentlessly seek answers. Geologists and historians have uncovered evidence of a catastrophic flood in the Mesopotamian region, suggesting that thousands of years ago, a devastating event might have inundated vast areas, giving rise to flood legends. Even more remarkably, there have been discoveries believed to be traces of the Ark. In 1959, a Turkish pilot flying over Mount Ararat spotted a boat-shaped structure. Since then, numerous expeditions have attempted to verify if it is indeed Noah's Ark. Some teams have found fossilized wood fragments and geological formations consistent with a large ship's shape. However, the question remains open. Is it truly Noah's Ark? Science continues to debate, while faith remains steadfast. The walls of Jericho, crumbling by trumpets and faith. Imagine standing before a city encircled by colossal, thick, and impenetrable walls, seemingly impossible to breach. A fortress built to withstand any enemy, protecting its inhabitants from external threats. But then the unthinkable happened. Those walls didn't fall due to siege engines, explosives, or chariots, but by something far more mysterious: the blast of trumpets and the resounding shouts of faith. This is the story of Jericho, one of humanity's oldest cities, and the site of one of the most enigmatic and debated events in the Bible, perplexing both science and history. According to biblical accounts, Jericho was a formidable stronghold with walls so high and robust that any attack seemed hopeless. For the Israelites, who had wandered in the desert for 40 years, conquering Jericho was an impossible challenge. Yet, God had a plan, one that far surpassed any conventional military strategy. The Israelite army received a peculiar command. Each day, they were to march around the city once in absolute silence. No attacks, no weapons, just quietly walking as if awaiting an unseen signal. For 6 days, they did this. On the 7th day, everything changed. They circled the city 7 times, the trumpets blared across the air, and the entire populace shouted in unison. Then, inexplicably, the mighty walls completely collapsed. Not by war machines, not by ordinary earthquakes, but by the power of sound and faith. Is this even possible? How could a procession and trumpets bring down such formidable walls? Throughout the 20th century, archaeologists have excavated Jericho seeking answers, and the story only grows more fascinating. In the 1950s, British archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon conducted a detailed excavation of the site and made a shocking discovery. There were indeed traces of a large wall that had collapsed suddenly. But even more surprisingly, evidence suggested the walls fell inward, an entirely unusual phenomenon. Typically, when a city is attacked, its walls are breached from the outside. But in Jericho, the collapse seemed to originate from within, precisely as recorded in the Bible, that the walls were not destroyed by human hands, but by a much greater power. Is there a natural explanation for this event? Some researchers suggest an earthquake could have been the actual cause. Jericho lies on a geological fault line, and earthquakes are not uncommon in the region. The idea of an earthquake seems plausible, but runs into a crucial detail. How could Joshua and the Israelites accurately predict the exact timing of an earthquake? And furthermore, how did it happen precisely at the moment the trumpets sounded and the people shouted in unison? If an earthquake was the cause, we must admit to an almost unbelievable synchronicity. Is this a case where science and faith intersect? What is certain is that the story of Jericho remains one of the greatest mysteries of biblical archaeology. Solomon's Temple, a radiant masterpiece of holiness. Imagine a magnificent structure whose walls were covered in pure gold, reflecting the sunlight like a celestial glow. A sacred place so profound, it was built to be the dwelling place of God Himself. This was Solomon's Temple, a masterpiece of Israel's sacred architecture, a structure shrouded in mystery, reverence, and power. But how was such a grand architectural feat erected? What does archaeology reveal about its existence? And most importantly, what was its true sacred significance? The story begins with King David, the great king of Israel. His heart burned with a desire to build a temple for God. However, this mission was not for him, but was passed to his son and successor, King Solomon, the wisest king in history. The chosen site was not arbitrary. Mount Moriah, a place where energy and faith converged, the very spot where centuries earlier, Patriarch Abraham nearly sacrificed his son Isaac, a location marked by supernatural and sacred events. The construction of the temple was not just an engineering marvel, but a monumental project where every detail held sacred meaning. The stones used were precisely cut, shaped, and prepared off-site before being brought to the construction area. An astonishing detail, not a single hammer or tool sound was heard at the construction site as commanded by God. This raises a fascinating question. How could such massive stones be moved, perfectly fitted, and assembled into a colossal temple without creating any on-site noise? Cedar wood from Lebanon, one of the most precious timbers of the time, was brought from afar. Its sacred fragrance permeated the space, serving not only aesthetic purposes, but also symbolizing nobility and connection with God. And then, the most impressive detail, the entire interior of the temple was covered in pure gold. The walls shone brilliantly like divine light, adorned with carvings of angels, palm trees, and flowers, creating a scene that transcended earthly reality. But the true heart of the temple was an even holier place, the most holy place. Here, the Ark of the Covenant, the most mysterious artifact in history, was placed as a symbol of God's physical presence among His people. After 7 years of diligent construction, the temple was finally completed. But what happened on dedication day was something no one could have foreseen. King Solomon gathered all of Israel for an unforgettable ceremony. Before the altar, the king offered a powerful prayer, asking God to accept this house as his dwelling place on earth. And then a miracle occurred. A cloud of glory suddenly descended, enveloping the entire temple, an indescribable physical presence. What followed was even more impressive. Fire fell from heaven onto the altar, consuming the offerings before the astonished eyes of the Israelites. It was a clear sign God had accepted the temple as His sanctuary. The people knelt in awe. In that moment, they stood before the presence of the living and true Creator. But the story doesn't end there. Solomon's temple remains a mystery through the centuries. Its secrets, its destruction, and the mystical circumstances surrounding it still echo today. The Tower of Babel, heavenly ambition and divine wrath. Imagine a world where all humanity spoke a single language, without barriers, without borders. Everyone united in a common purpose, to build a tower soaring to the heavens. But this ambition, instead of bringing humanity closer to God, ignited His wrath. And then, something incredible happened. Communication broke down irrevocably, and the great edifice was abandoned forever. But what exactly was the Tower of Babel? Did it truly exist? What does archaeology say about this story? And more importantly, what profound lesson does this structure still teach us today? The Bible recounts that after the Great Flood, Noah's descendants began to spread across the world, repopulating the earth. For a time, they remained united, speaking a common language, which granted them extraordinary power, unlimited organizational capacity, and unhindered progress. At one point, they decided to settle in the plain of Shinar, an area that corresponds to ancient Mesopotamia today. But they didn't just want to live there, they wanted to leave their mark. With the advanced technology of the time, kiln-fired bricks and bitumen for mortar, they began constructing a colossal structure, an ambitiously tall tower, becoming the ultimate symbol of human self-sufficiency. They declared, "Let us build for ourselves a name, lest we be scattered over the face of the whole earth." They wanted to reach the heavens, but not only that, they wanted to challenge God. The project progressed. The tower grew taller and taller. Human power seemed boundless. But then, God intervened. He observed the construction and made a decisive judgment: to confuse human language so they could no longer understand each other. Imagine the scene. A bricklayer asks for a brick, but his colleague understands him to be asking for water. The foreman tries to give orders, but no one comprehends. From a unified project, everything descended into absolute chaos in an instant. The construction site turned into a scene of utter confusion. The empire of perfect communication now dissolved. People no longer understood each other, and coordination ceased. The great tower was abandoned. The builders scattered, forming the various nations and cultures we know today. But the big question remains: did this really happen? Many scholars suggest that the Tower of Babel may have been inspired by a ziggurat, a type of stepped pyramid temple common in Mesopotamia. The most famous among them is Etemenanki, a massive temple built in ancient Babylon to honor the god Marduk. Historical records state that Etemenanki was called the House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, a curiously similar name to the purpose of the Tower of Babel described in the Bible. Over centuries, this temple was destroyed and rebuilt multiple times before being permanently abandoned. Was it the original tower mentioned in the Bible? There's no definitive answer, but the similarities in description are astonishing. More than a story about the dispersal of human language, the Tower of Babel is a timeless warning. How far can human ambition go? The relentless pursuit of power and glory can lead us to challenges beyond comprehension. The Second Temple in Jerusalem, a symbol of rebirth and sorrow. Prepare yourself, for the next structure we're about to explore holds even more astonishing secrets. Imagine living through a period of great suffering and exile. Your people are driven from their homeland, forcibly brought to a foreign land, and witness their holy temple, the heart of their faith, reduced to rubble. For many, that would be the end of their connection with God, but not for the Jewish people. Upon returning from their exile in Babylon, they carried a dream to rebuild the temple and restore their faith. The Second Temple in Jerusalem was not merely a structure, but a symbol of rebirth, hope, and the identity of an entire nation. But how was this temple built? What made it special? And above all, why was it tragically destroyed? After 70 years of exile in Babylon, the Jewish people were finally allowed to return home. King Cyrus the Great not only permitted their return, but also commanded the rebuilding of the temple and provided financial support for the project. As they began construction, they faced a harsh reality. The new temple would not compare to King Solomon's temple. It was smaller, less opulent, without the Ark of the Covenant, lacking the brilliant glow of pure gold covering its walls. The elders, who remembered the first temple, wept in sorrow as they saw the new structure pale in comparison to its former glory. But then something unexpected happened. The prophet Haggai delivered a shocking message. The glory of this present house will be greater than the glory of the former house. How could this be? How could a seemingly inferior temple be more glorious than Solomon's temple? Centuries later, King Herod the Great, an ambitious king obsessed with grandeur, decided to expand and redecorate the Second Temple. From a humble structure, it became one of the wonders of the ancient world. The temple courts were doubled in size, creating a vast religious complex. Colossal pillars and grand passageways were built, impressing any visitor. Parts of the temple were covered in gold and white marble, making it gleam under the Jerusalem sun. The result was a magnificent structure that left pilgrims in awe. The temple became the beating heart of Judaism, where crowds gathered to pray, offer sacrifices, and seek God's presence. It was in this very temple that Jesus Christ taught, drove out merchants, and made a shocking prophecy. Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. Matthew 24:2. This prophecy was later tragically fulfilled. In 70 AD, the Roman Empire besieged Jerusalem in response to the First Jewish Revolt. After months of fierce fighting, the Roman legions captured the city and burned the temple. Historical records state that gold melted in the flames, flowing into the cracks between the stones, causing Roman soldiers to dismantle each section of the temple to retrieve the precious metal. When everything was over, only rubble remained. All that was left was a part of the structure, the western wall, one of the last remnants of the temple's glory, and a poignant reminder of loss. But the story of the temple doesn't end there. The temple was once where God's presence resided, where offerings were made, and people sought forgiveness and guidance. But something changed. Jesus Christ brought a revolutionary message. Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days. John 2:19. He wasn't just talking about stone walls. He was talking about himself. The true temple was no longer a building. God would dwell in the hearts of people. Now, reflect with me. If God desires to dwell within you, is your life ready to receive Him?